On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I'd like to welcome you all to today's 2022 Fall Address. We've had so much to celebrate over the last year. We've welcomed our new president, President Gordon Jones, and are really excited about what we have in store, especially as we look at our vision for the future. We've been able to see a lot of our brand elements roll out, and we know that we have many more that are going to be coming out over this next year. I just want to express our gratitude on behalf of the board for all of the work that you as faculty and staff do throughout the year and the energy that you're bringing to this upcoming school year. Our opportunity to really make a difference in our growing community for all of our students day in and day out means the world to this broader community, and much appreciation from the board for all of the work that you do. I know we've got a great speaker lined up for you today, and comments from our own President Gordon Jones. So thank you and enjoy today's program.
Hey everybody, welcome. I hope you're as excited as I am for today. I look out and it's sometimes hard to imagine the family that makes up an institution, an organization, and this gives such a great visualization from certainly where I'm at, I hope from you. Did everybody love that video? Because I did, and it's not just because it's my boss, but it's also because I thought it was a great video. So can you join me again in just thanking Molly for that? We are gonna, this is both meant to be inspiring, hopefully a great kickoff. I think there's a story of CWI that we get to jointly share today, but it will be a couple different things we want to cover. And first and foremost, a couple groups that I want to shine light on and also continue to express appreciation. While this is a group that I know you are working across our whole institution, that looks like both a lot of facilities. It may look like different audiences. We are clearly embedded in our community, but there are members who really are deep advocates for the work of CWI, and we may not spend as much time or see those individuals as often, and I do want to take a moment, and in particular, two groups. The first is our Board of Trustees. You've just heard from our board Chair Molly Lenti in that video, but we have a group of individuals who span both Canyon and Ada County, which is obviously our service area, who are elected, who are volunteers, who commit an incredible amount of time and apply their expertise, their oversight, their advocacy, and ultimately bring voice and guidance to this institution. That looks like advice, guidance to me. They are the stewards and the fiduciary responsibility for this institution. But I do think it is always worth taking a moment and acknowledging, while we do celebrate the work we all do here, those who are helping us in ways that we may not always see. So with that, we have two of our trustees here, Board Chair Molly Lenti and Board of Trustee member Jim Reams, out of our currently 4 trustees serving. And I'd ask if you wouldn't mind just quick standing up. We like to thank and welcome those who are among us. Thank you. I also do want to shine light on another group of very important individuals, some of whom may be in this room. There's also a chance that many of them may not be. We have a foundation, and I don't expect everyone here to know the full governance or organizational structure of CWI, but let's put it this way. We have financial support that allows us to do the work that we get so excited every day to get up and do. That financial support comes from multiple sources. Some of that is our citizens through our legislators. Some of that is through our tax rolls. Some of that is through tuition students themselves are asked to put together. But there's also an entity called the Foundation. It's a group that's a separate but very highly aligned group to CWI. It's called, hence, the CWI Foundation. And they are receiving and stewards of and dispensing financial monies to support CWI activities that come from individuals, perhaps corporations or foundations themselves, who want to support the work that you're doing in support of students. And that foundation is an integral part. Also, our advocates. They are volunteers on our board. They bring tremendous breadth of expertise, voice, and insight. And I do want to take a moment and acknowledge, I do not believe our board chair, Mike Pena, our incoming board chair, Mike Pena, our outgoing board chair, Ivan Castillo, and a number of members. But in the event there is any foundation members here, I'd love it if you'd stand up. And either way, could we also just express appreciation for the foundation board? So one of the things that I hope you've heard or read in emails that have come from me is this desire that we as a organization recognize both and celebrate what we've already achieved, what you have achieved. I'm 8 months in the role. You all, for the most part, welcome newcomers if you're less than 8 months. I'm glad we're all together in this. But for those of you, we recognize and celebrate the years, 13 years we've been serving students directly. But we also, you will have heard from me, a belief that we're always in an ever-present and changing community that has needs that evolve, even if we don't do anything different. But the hope is that we preserve capacity in our work, in ourselves, to think about how we might continue to either evolve, reinvigorate, think about more creatively, perhaps ways in which we can make ourselves collectively better. I've always said, you don't have a perfect president, and I got news for you, you never will. But you have a president who's committed to every day trying to make myself the best president I can be. It has me reading, it has me talking to people, it has me constantly bringing a word that you'll hear me talk about often, which is curiosity to my work. I'm intensely curious, I hope you are too, and I realize this is a room that cuts across all aspects. And I'm speaking to everybody, whether it be faculty, staff, facilities, admissions, humanities faculty. I trust and I know we have that, but I always feel the need to reiterate it collectively because I want you to know that's a shared journey we all go in. And part of that is taking time to step back and find times corporately as a group to say, hey, where can we learn? And today, we have such an opportunity. I love the idea of inviting thought leaders, individuals who are able to broaden some of our thinking. And today we have a presentation that kicks off and really sets, I think, a tone for us. And it's a speaker we are thrilled to have, Dr. Kevin Fleming. And one of the things you're gonna, I think we share, and Dr. Fleming and I had a chance to just chat briefly, is I'm an individual, and I hope that wherever we are as individuals, we think about not just where we are today, but where is the ball headed? And that speaks to this idea of continuous improvement, the idea that how we may have done something 10 years ago, 20 years ago, may not be how we do things today. And we all know that, right? We've seen it in our own lives. We shop for shoes differently, perhaps. The rise of Amazon, rise of electric vehicles, rise of constantly changing. I couldn't believe it, realizing the iPhone's only 15 years old. And maybe I'm older, so that doesn't feel like a long time, but that felt short, and I can't imagine a world without an iPhone. And yet, my kids have no idea when I start talking about rotary phones and other things, so I'll stop there. But Dr. Fleming, I think, will bring a lot more detail, but I think we share that idea of ever-present change. How do we broaden ourselves in this idea of continuous improvement? So that alone has me excited because at the same time, I'm sure we come at these things from our unique angles. So 3 brief points, and I'd like to invite Dr. Fleming up at that point. A little bit about Dr. Fleming. Dr. Fleming is, he's an educator, he's a speaker, he's a CEO, he's an author. I've had an image I've seen with books, and I don't know if we have that as a slate for Dr. Fleming, but, and most of all, what I always appreciate, I don't know if you feel the same way, is when I have thought leaders who are also still in the game. Dr. Fleming is, to this day, the Vice President of Planning and Development at Norco College, a 2-year school in Southern California. And I love that marriage of saying we step back, and he's able to speak with authority and background, but also can talk about the everyday challenges. The passion, he's a passionate advocate, as I know we all are, for ensuring all of our students intentionally equip their potential. and enter the labor market with competitive advantage. And I'm sure in that definition, he includes individuals who also want to spend junior and senior year somewhere else and enter the labor market with competitive advantage. And helping students find their purpose on purpose. Two things I love in there: competitive advantage. It's the idea that we have distinctiveness. It's that we don't necessarily by instinct want to just be like everyone else. We want to be thoughtful, choiceful, pick those moments we want to be consistent with our industry, but also think about how we might be distinctive in serving our community. And then students and purpose. So at risk of sounding like I'm giving the talk, I'm going to now invite up Dr. Kevin Fleming. Please welcome Dr. Fleming.
I want to start with a story that I never could have predicted I would share with you. I'm in my 18th year in the trenches with you in community college land, and I took this picture about 9 years ago of student government, and there are additional students in this picture, but this is Jessica and Maria at my home institution at Norco College, and these two women have lived parallel lives, but they're not sisters. They're both Latina, females, grew up in Corona, California, which is a feeder community to Norco College. They both went to the same high school, graduated the same year with about the same GPA. They had about the same socioeconomic structure, they had the same support system. They both wanted to go into medicine. They came to Norco College and they both declared biology and they wanted to go down a pre-med path. They both joined student government when this picture was taken. They both graduated the same year and they happened to both transfer to UCI, University of California, Irvine. They both declared a pre-med major there. And they graduated 2 years later with about the same GPA, and after tracking them, I later found out they both applied to UCLA Medical School as their first choice medical school. Now on paper, these two women are almost identical, but there's a little difference depending on how they spent their time. See, Jessica was involved in student government, always was. In high school, at Norco College, when she went to UCI, she was a resident advisor. She lived in the dormitories and helped advise her peers. When she wrote her application essay to UCLA Medical School, she wrote about wanting to be a leader in medicine and actually wanting to be a faculty member and teach someday at a med school. When Maria was writing her application essay, she took a slightly different bent. You see, the summer after she graduated from high school, but before she came to Norco College, she took one CTE class. It was emergency medical technician, and she became an EMT. And the 2 years she was at Norco College and the 2 years she was at UC Irvine, she had a part-time job riding along with the ambulances. When she wrote her application essay, she also wanted to be a leader and discuss, focusing on holistic medicine in her community. But she wrote about what it was like to ride along with the ambulances and to stand at the back with the double doors open and communicating bilingually to a family and letting them know what their options were and what their options weren't. And she wrote about what it was like to ride along and to inject or to compress and what it was like to save or lose lives. One of these women got into their first choice and got into UCLA Medical School, and one of them didn't. Both smart, both gregarious, both with bright futures. Now maybe I'm baiting the audience a little bit, but if I had a show of hands, I'm sure most of you might be able to guess that Maria got into UCLA Medical School. When I was in school in the 90s, it used to be about extracurricular activities and co-curricular activities and getting that extra GPA bump and getting the AP class. That used to be the point of differentiation, right? And I was told that, frankly, that education counts. I was told it so much that I believe that the more education you get, the more successful you'll be and the more opportunities you will have to gain financial prosperity. So I went to a small private liberal arts Jesuit institution, and I thought, well, if one degree is good, two must be better. So I declared a degree in psychology and philosophy. And I augmented my education at Moore Park Community College and at California State University, Northridge, so I can complete 2 double degrees in 4 years. And then my senior year, I decided, well, I don't really want to go and get my PsyD. I don't want to be a marriage and family therapist. So then I graduated and decided I would go and get a job at the philosophy company. It doesn't exist. So I found myself, like so many of my contemporaries, maybe so many of you, I was overeducated and underemployed. And so I did what any student would do at 21 years of age with no technical or professional skills but a strong resume. I went back to school. Yeah, gold star, like 8 of you said it. So I went to The Ohio State University. I got my master's degree in school. Now they call it educational policy and leadership with an emphasis in student affairs. But it's a degree in school, and I did my counseling internship, and I took my Myers-Briggs certification. I learned how to create ed plans, and I enjoyed that process. I then got a job at the University of Redlands back home in Southern California. I was involved in student services and student life and student government and Greek affairs. And I got interested in the business side of higher education. And yes, it's a business. There's a budget. There's personnel. There's KPIs. It's a business. Fun fact, there are more lobbyists inside the Beltway in Washington, D.C. for higher education than any other industry. You might think it's pharmaceuticals or banking or insurance, but it's not. That's a different conversation as to why. But I digress. There was one day, if I could be candid with this audience, where I'm sitting in my small, humble apartment in Redlands, and I look up in the wall of my 4 degrees. I had my 2 bachelor's degrees, my 2 master's degrees, because I went back to get my MBA at University of Redlands. They give you tuition remission when you work at a place like that, so it's free tuition, right? So I'm like, well, I might as well get another free master's. And I ended up taking out the student loans anyway, because it was a good interest rate. So because that's what you do. And I actually bought a Jeep Grand Cherokee that I no longer own, but I'm still paying off. Financial literacy is a whole other conversation, right? And I'm sitting there with my 4 degrees, feeling proud as a first-generation college student. My dad was in the Army. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and a part-time bookkeeper. I felt proud. I made it. I did what they said to do. I got my 2 bachelor's and 2 master's degrees. Then I looked down at my desk at the pile of bills that I could not afford to pay, because Sallie Mae was over $647 a month, plus insurance, plus rent, plus gas, plus clothes, plus the occasional entertainment. And I couldn't afford to live. I was what they call underemployed. I wasn't unemployed. I was underemployed, not commanding the wage that I would expect to earn for having amassed all these degrees. And it was a friend of mine who says, you know what, Kevin, you kind of have these special skills about like artistic and technology. Have you thought about going back and getting your certificate in GIS? And my response was, what the heck is GIS? And I learned about geospatial information science. And if you're not familiar with a company called ESRI, they happened to be in Redlands. ESRI is to map making, like word processing, or Microsoft is to word processing, right? So they created geospatial mapping tools. And I went back and I got my 1-week, 40-hour industry credential in ArcGIS. And I learned digital cartography. It was that technical skill that actually lifted me out of working poverty, and I got a job with the California state system. And I was doing geospatial analysis for the largest higher education system in the world. We have 116 community colleges in California, and I was part of a small team that was looking at the demographics today and the demographics tomorrow, the labor market projections for the future, where companies were, and I overlaid the demographics to identify what programs should we have at what college, at what scale, to meet the labor market projections of 10 years out. And it was a fantastic position, and I learned of this whole world of economic development and workforce development, and I discovered the chasm that exists in our system because college readiness and career readiness are not the same thing. I then went back to school, got my PhD at Claremont Graduate University, in part to hide out there for 7 years from Sallie Mae and get the forbearance, right? So I did my PhD topic was on program viability and in closing the labor market. And frankly, I did all of this because I thought degrees were the foundation. I'm here to validate with you that yes, diplomas and degrees are the foundation, but I learned that credentials and certifications are what provide the competitive advantage. And in tomorrow's world, that is the thing. It's not just the GPA. It's not just the community service transcript. But it's being able to demonstrate to an employer in a third-party verified way that you can actually do something, and you're a critical thinker. You understand how to write an essay and follow instructions, but you can also have demonstrated verifiable ability in a skill or a task, whether that's graphic design or OSHA certification or forklift driving or GIS or whatever the case might be. Click. So one of the questions I want to encourage you to ask, because when I talk, I want to use some philosophical things, but a few tangible things you can turn around and implement tomorrow, right? So here's a couple questions for you to collectively reflect on and ask. The first is, what are all the industry certifications that we embed and that we offer in our classes? I know there's a number of them. But then secondly, ask yourselves and discuss which others exist that we don't offer. Transparently communicate to your community all of the certifications that are embedded in your courses, embedded in your degrees, that they can get. And this is not just for welding or for machining. This is for communications. This is for political science. This is for biology. This is for chemistry. This is primarily for the general education courses as well. This is for graphic design. This is for computer science. This is for anywhere where industry has said, hey, we have a way that we can verify ability in this, because we want to give them that. And there's a couple of tools and a couple of resources that, if you're not familiar with the bottom one, Career One-Stop Certification Finder, it is a robust search engine. You literally can type in anything like public speaking, and it'll pump out a list of industry credentials that exist for public speaking that will give your student that competitive advantage on their resume, on their LinkedIn profile, to be at the head of that pile of applications, whether they're going for university transfer, for graduate school, for an internship, for that coveted co-op. This will help them just get that competitive advantage. See, we've all seen charts like this that show the correlation or the implied correlation between education on one axis and earnings on the other. And I say it's an implied correlation because it looks like it's stair-stepping, but for the first time in America, I want you to notice something. Our students can expect to earn less with a master's degree than with a bachelor's degree. And this is the first time this happened as a few years ago. Why? Because of people like me that got multiple degrees in the ologies, got in a lot of student loan debt, and wasn't actually employable with that one degree. And this is new, but I want to highlight the second word in this title of this slide. Say it aloud with me. What does it say? It says USA median. All right, math elites, do you remember the median? Mode, mean, average, right? It's the one right in the middle. So that means statistically, there's someone, 50% of people earn more and 50% of people earn less in this scale. But by show of hands, who is perfectly and totally average in every way without any skills or deficiencies? Anyone? There's normally, in the size of this room, there's normally like one sarcastic, like token median person, right? But let's be real for a minute. Here's the deal. You're a three-dimensional human being. There are things you are exceptional at and you are so good at. And there are some things you suck at. That's how this works, right, as a human being. And part of this is that self-awareness to know you're not average, you're exceptional in so many ways, and so are our students. But part of the trick is knowing and identifying what are your skills and what are your natural aptitudes and where really does your heart sing, where you excel in the gifts that you've been given or that you have developed to make the world a better place. Then how do we align yourself with that in the world? Because you see, I'm not average and you are not average. And so this idea of the median is not actually true for you, nor is it true for your students. And it wasn't true for me when I found myself over $230,000 in student loan debt. And I was making $36,000 a year. I missed the day in class where they talked about low student loan debt and high income. I apparently got that completely reversed. I was also absent a day in second grade when they taught Roman numerals, and I was screwed up for months, but that's a whole other conversation, not knowing what V's and I's were. There's this great poll that recently came out from the Harris poll. It's called the Project Success, and they just said this, that a Harris poll found that 2/3 of 14 to 20, 30-year-olds, that's our traditional pipeline of traditional age students, they want a degree to provide financial security, ranking that above all else when it comes to their motivation for going to college. Yes, there are some that want to become intellectual thinkers. There's a few of them. But for the most part, they want a good job, and they want financial security. And that's really what they're coming to higher education for the most part in today's world. So I want to spend a moment talking about the economics of a degree. And I know this is really small for those of you that chose to sit in the back, but frankly, that's your own fault. You chose to sit in the back. You could have come up here. So I'll describe the slide. This is a whisker plot, or a spider plot. I think they call it a whisker plot, because if you turn your head on the side, it looks like maybe whiskers of a cat. And it shows the median, the 25th, and the 75th percentile of all earners. This is of the United States snapshot. You have females on the left and males on the right. And it shows all workers that are 25 years and older by both gender and education levels. And what I want to point is two things for those of you in the front half that can see this. The first thing that might pop out at you is the fact that the scales are not the same on both sides of the charts. We still have income disparity by gender in this country. We need to discuss that and recognize that while we have a salary schedule, and so we don't have that in our world for the most part, that still does exist. So we have to discuss and combat that. It has nothing, of course, to do with gender, but about the majors that one selects, but that's a different presentation. But the second thing that might pop out at you, especially for those of you in the front, is where you fall on this chart. Because if you're anything like me, we're selfish human beings. We're narcissistic by our design. And so you might look at this and look at where you fall on this chart. And for me, when I first saw this chart, and this comes from the College Board, by the way, as a source of this, these are the SAT people, and they put this out in a report called Education Pays. And when I first saw this, I was a male, still am. I had 4 degrees at the time, so I looked here on the right-hand side. And adjusted for inflation, when I looked at this scale, I was below the dark blue bar. I was in this kind of white triangle at the bottom of the slide. Now, no one aspires to be in the bottom of a slide like this. No one aspires to be working poor. No one wants to be below the 25th percentile of earnings like I found myself. And if I could speak very candidly to your team, President Trustees, I felt screwed. Right? I found myself completely in debt and overeducated and underemployed. I was making, even adjusted for inflation, about $52,000, which is way below the $63,000 mark here on the bottom of the slide. And this slide, they extract any full-time university student. They took out of the data set anyone that's a seasonal worker at Amazon. This is the full-time labor force, our workforce of America. But then I had my aha moment. And I want you to lean in for this, because this was my aha moment as an educator. I refer to myself now as a recovering academic elitist. Recovering being the key word, because of this slide. Here's what I noticed. If you look at the bottom of the slide for females and the top of the slide for males, you can get the whole range of earnings for a gender. And you'll see that if your students go on to get a 2-year degree, and they graduate from CWI as a terminal degree, they can expect in this country to earn between $30,000 and $78,000 a year. Bottom of the range for females, top of the range for males. Now, can we pause for a minute and just agree, as a room, that's a pretty big range for getting, quote unquote, the same degree, in air quotes, yeah? They got a 2-year degree. But that's a big range of earnings from $30,000 to $78,000. Similarly, if we compare 2-year to 4-year earners, if we look at the bottom of the scale for females, the top of the scale for males, we'll see that if your students graduate, transfer to BSU or some other place, they can expect to earn between $40,000 and $110,000 a year. Now, can we also pause for a moment and agree that's a pretty big range for getting, quote unquote, the same degree? So one truth that it's important we talk about is, firstly, that not all degrees are equal, economically speaking. And there's a lot of variables to that. There's a lot of ways to unpack that, right? And I don't want you to misperceive that, but not every degree has equal labor market viability. But here is my aha moment. My moment is when I realized that wasn't the whole population. That was the middle 50%. Which means if your students get a 2-year degree at CWI, 25% of them, 1 out of 4, can expect to earn more than $78,000. And if your students transfer to a 4-year degree, 25% of them, 1 out of 4, can expect to earn less than $40,000. Some of you are experiencing what the literature calls cognitive dissonance. That's what our students call WTF. 15 of you are like, what's WTF? She'll explain it at the break. Don't have her tell you now. We don't talk about this as much. And these are not my data, and you could pull these for Idaho, right? This is the reality of the labor market, because the world has changed, the labor market has changed. And I don't know you, but I know you. And I know you care about your students. And we got into this field because we want to change the trajectory of people's lives, but we can't pretend that every degree is the same, or that by getting more pieces of paper, they're not going to find themselves completely screwed, over in debt, underemployed. And we need to have honest conversations about this, frankly, just so our students can be great consumers of higher education. And they could be superb consumers of what they do after they graduate. You see, I circle down here, and I know it's hard to read. There's this category from the Department of Labor here called some college, no degree. That's if they get that certification or journeyman or that credential. 25% of males can expect to earn more than $76,000 with that, compared to 25% of males can expect to earn less than $50,000 a year with a degree in the ologies, I affectionately call psychology, philosophy, sociology, anthropology, right? So this is not about what's better or worse. It's not about what has more viability than others. It's really just about acknowledging the fundamental truth in today's labor market that education counts, but skills count more. And if there ever was a time when we thought it was okay for these students to get degrees and those students to get skills, let me make it very clear that day is gone. And all students, frankly, need both. They need the rigorous education, but they also need verifiable skills. Don't misperceive my comments. So I want to pause for a minute with like a caveat for my fellow philosophy faculty and others in the room. Formal education is an imperative, and it is still important, and the world still does value that piece of paper and the accreditation that we're able to confer. But we also know from years of this in the labor market, and I'm sorry the red font is hard to read in this room, it says, but it is insufficient when that formal education is unapplied or disconnected. I believe that all education is relevant. I think Shakespeare's histories has relevancy. Our job as a community is to help connect the dots for our students, so we answer the question for them every day in every lesson to understand why. And why is it relevant? See, I believe that, and some of you are familiar with the 3 R's. You call it reading, writing, and arithmetic. Baby boomers, someone explain to me after why you call it the 3 R's, by the way. It's like an R, a W, and an A, but we call it the 3 R's. I believe there's actually 5 R's, and it looks like in transporting the slides, some of them got a little, my formatting got a little messed up here, but there's 5 slides. There's reading, writing, arithmetic. There's relevance, having relevancy in education, and then there's the reality. And what I mean by the reality is the reality of the labor market, and at least knowing what their prospects can be and what they can expect to earn and how that degree can help them in certain ways, and how the degree to which will help them. So I want to share with you one labor market truth that is consistent in this country and in this state. Let's watch this very short video clip. It's called 127.
The economy and the world have dramatically changed. In 1960, when taking into account all jobs in the American economy, 20% required a 4-year degree or higher, 20% were technical jobs requiring skilled training, and 60% were classified as unskilled. But what's the right percentage to meet the labor market demand for tomorrow? Georgetown University predicts only 33% of all jobs will require a 4-year degree or more in the future, while the overwhelming majority will be highly skilled jobs requiring professional and technical training at the credential or associate's degree level. The true ratio of jobs in our economy is 1:7. For every occupation that requires a master's degree or more, approximately 2 professional jobs require a university degree, and there are over half a dozen jobs requiring a 1-year certificate or 2-year degree. And each of these technicians are in very high-skilled areas that are in great demand. So while most jobs in the future will require some education and training beyond high school, the majority of occupations will not require a bachelor's degree or more. It was the same in 1960, the same in 2000, and will be the same in 2040.
I love the quote by John Gardner, former politician and educator, who years ago said this: "The society which scorns excellence in plumbing because plumbing is a humble activity and tolerates shoddiness in philosophy because it is an exalted activity will have neither good plumbing nor good philosophy. Neither its pipes nor its theories will hold water." And I love that, because does the world need artisans, poets, and painters and philosophers? Yes. But do we also like smooth roads, affordable electricity, and clean water? Yes. The society needs both, and somehow over the last generation and a half, we've almost vilified, to some extent, is it not you, but as a society vilified sometimes frankly, just doing hard work. And we've put maybe that 4-year degree, the master's degree, on somewhat of a societal pedestal, at the risk of making the laborer or the journeyman feel less than, or not as strong towards, right? So I want to spend a minute talking about the two worlds of learning and work. And frankly, the fact that they're two different worlds is somewhat problematic in and of its face. But I want to talk about how the worlds of learning and work are shifting. So I want to start by describing what is work. I want to spend a minute talking about the old promise of what the world of work used to look like. And frankly, let's look at our whole lifespan. Your lifespan and mine is kind of thought to be organized into 3 big chapters. The first is education, the second is a career, and then third is retirement. We can organize our life in this bucket, and many of us have milestone moments in these 3 ribbons, right? So it typically looks like this. You start out with going to education. You start around kindergarten, maybe around like age 5. You go through compulsory education until you're maybe 18, maybe 22 if you go on to some form of post-secondary education, and you get your education out of the way. How many times have I heard that from parents? Well, I want to make sure my students get the education now, right? And they get it, quote unquote, out of the way. Why? Well, because they may not get it later is often the response. And then after you graduate, then many of us then got a job. And we climbed the career what? The career ladder. That's the analogy, right? And we would get a job, we would then progress in our position, and we would get a new business card, we'd get a corner office, maybe a corporate credit card. Wouldn't it be great if we got a corporate credit card? And we would, at CWI, I'm just throwing it out there, President, I'm just saying. And we can climb the career ladder, and then what happens? Then around age 66 or so, you retire. You collect your pension. And then the system by design is a few years later at 70, you die. That's the way the system was designed, people. We weren't expected to live this long, right? So we could see our life organized in this fashion, and we know that throughout the milestones in this, success was measured as such, by codified, transferred, predetermined skills, and existing knowledge. We learned it in school, and then we were expected to sharpen our own saw and upgrade our own skills along the way, and we were expected to use that education we got years ago on our resume and in our job interviews in order to progress throughout our career ladder. By the way, I think the analogy of a career ladder is long gone, right? I think in our world now, what I've heard and what I think is more relevant is more of rock climbing than ladder climbing. And rock climbing, you ascend, but then sometimes there's a lateral move. Sometimes you even take a demotion, which is like, ooh, this evil thing, to like get a demotion. But if you're doing something that you love and you're learning a skill, and that enables you to get around other obstacles to then ascend to the summit, I think most of our students' careers, and maybe some of ours, looks more like rock climbing than ladder climbing, but I digress. This is the old model. And the old model, again, is that predetermined knowledge and skills. Well, let me describe for you the new model that looks a little bit different. The new reality of work, firstly, let's start with the end in mind, to quote Stephen Covey, is that life expectancy is longer. Now, depending on the study, depending on the geography, depending on your personal medical history, they say it could be between 82 and 92. Let's call it 90, but it's on the upper end. Medical advances are fascinating. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I think she'll live to be at least 90, if not more, right? And that's exciting and scary to live a century, but we know that's the lifespan, so let's start there. Now, I think the 3 ribbons in our life, and I want to credit my colleague, Heather McGowan, from whom this concept comes from. She's the author of the book, The Adaptation Advantage, unsolicited book recommendation, if you're interested. But she coins it in, instead of education, career, and retirement, it's really you learn, you leverage, and you have longevity. And this looks very different because in this model, instead of education happening first and then shelving it and using it throughout your career, it actually looks more like this, where you learn and then you engage in the world of work. Then you learn some more and you leverage what you learn to add value. And then you go in the work and then you learn again and then you leverage that in your career. And then you learn again and you leverage that in your career. And then you learn again and then you engage another boss, another career, another company. And you do this throughout, frankly, your lifespan, and you remain engaged. See, a lot of folks in the last 15 years, they don't retire and then go to Florida and play shuffleboard anymore, right? They retire and then they do what their heart always wanted to. They start that nonprofit. They start their own business. They do community service work. They work in activism. They travel abroad. They start doing other things, maybe their 3rd, 4th, or 5th career, and they remain engaged throughout the lifespan. So this is that concept of lifelong learning that we've been talking about ad nauseum, but now we actually are starting to see the pattern where students are doing this. And your average age at CWI is not to 19. Your average age is mid to high 20s, and if you look at community college education over the last, like 20, 30 years, it keeps getting older. The average age keeps increasing, and frankly, we get a lot of students that already have a bachelor's degree that are coming back to us because they're looking to engage and leverage and upskill and get that new piece of computer software code or knowledge in order to advance in their career. And in this new reality, success is not measured by codified schools and previous knowledge. It's about how your ability to learn, your ability to adapt, and how you can create new value. See, I don't know about you, but my crystal ball is broken. It's shattered a long time ago. So I'm not a futurist. I don't know exactly what the world's going to look like in 10 or 15 years. But what I can tell you is the rate of change is dramatically changing, and it's going to look very different. And the ability for you and I and for our students to be able to continue to leverage what it is they learn and to pivot and to learn is going to be exponentially valuable to them. What I've learned is that graduation is a milestone, but it is not the destination. Think about destinations for a minute. I'm a runner. I would do marathons, 26.2 miles. And you know what I do after I cross the finish line? I stop. I'm bloody tired. I just ran a damn marathon, right? Like 26.2 miles. And when our students, when they cross the finish line, what do we expect them to do? Stop. Is graduation when we want them to stop? No, they're just getting started. It's a pivotal milestone, but the race is far from over. So we want to celebrate that, yes, we want to get them to that milestone, but we need to have our goalpost way further beyond than that because we want them to have that competitive advantage and continue to be curious way after we tell them to turn their tassel from one side to the other. We want to celebrate that important milestone with them, but their race is just getting started. When we look at the history of higher education, and I teach a master's class on this, but I won't bore you. It takes me like a month to get through this in the grad program. I'm going to do it for you in like 90 seconds, don't worry. But when you look at the history of our world and of education, we can organize it by the talent and the definition of talent and the tools that we use. And we've moved from the hunter-gatherer era to the agricultural era to the industrial era. And our mental models for training and education are right in between the industrial era and the information era. In the industrial era, we looked at efficiency and optimization. That's when the public school system was designed. And as some of you know, we put students in school based on their manufacture date, their birth date. And that's the year of school they're in, regardless of their abilities or aptitude. And we keep them in that chair for 12 years, no matter what they do or how smart they are or what they do, unless they're an exception that tests out. But they have to sit there until a certain age compulsory. And it was all about labor replacement. Well, now we've been in the information era for a while where instead of focusing on efficiency and optimization, it's been about acquired knowledge and skills. Some of you might have even heard the term KSAs, K-S-A. We've been focusing a lot on knowledge, skills, and ability, the Ks, the S's, and the A's. And that's been our mental model for a lot of our curriculum development and for our training program. That was the basis for No Child Left Behind and for a lot of our federal models. It was really around this information era shift. We're stepping out of that. And we have one foot in this new reality, and the terminology is still being debated, but some are calling it the augmented era, where it's really going to be not even so much about skills and knowledge, it's really going to be about the ability to be creative, to be agile, to add value, and to really adapt to whatever industry is. Look at all the industries that have completely changed over the last 10 years. I can't imagine. You mentioned electric cars. I read an article recently that said if your child is born of like my 5-year-old, she will never have a driver's license and probably never need to drive because her automated car will drive her wherever she needs to go. She'll just get in the car and say, hey, Siri, take me to CWI, lot 7, and then there she goes, right? She's not even going to need to have a driver's license, arguably. So the world is changing in unpredictable ways, but it is about that augmented era, and so we need to recognize that a classroom with a sled desk, with transparencies or PowerPoint slide that we developed 15 years ago may not be the right approach anymore for our students as we really want them to be ready for the world of tomorrow. We are shifting from optimizing, and I'm sorry that the red doesn't come out very well, but we are shifting from driving productivity to inspiring human potential. That should be like a poster or a t-shirt or something, right? For years, we're about optimizing and driving productivity. Now it's about inspiring. Part of the great resignation or the great reshuffle of all these people leaving is because they're not authentically who they are and they're not in a job that they feel, they report, that is really in alignment with their best self and who they can be. And there's a lot of different tools and platforms out there that we can use as a community college community to help our students find their human potential and to really grow and develop it. And I want to highlight just one for you because I think their theoretical framework is just so powerful. So I want to spend just a few minutes talking to you about this program called the Dreamcatcher program. And I want to just share with you their model because I really think it might resonate with you as it resonated with me as a community college servant. So the first question this program asks youth, and they have a version for high school and they have another one for college and adult, but the first question they ask is, what do you love? Do we ask our students that enough? What do they love? What makes their heart sing? What are they curious about? If time and money were not an object, and if they had no constraints, what would they spend their weekend doing? And then the program follows up, and then it secondly asks students to really reflect and think about this question of what does the world need? It's a fascinating question when you start looking around at what are the problems the world has that need solving. And if a student can identify something that they love and the world needs it, that might be their personal mission. CWI has a mission statement, right? Corporations have a mission statement. I would encourage you as an individual human being to have your own mission statement. I wrote mine years ago. I have it tacked up on my bulletin board. And no matter what my business card is, no matter what my current project is, I'm trying to solve a world's problem and I'm in line with what I love to do. That's my personal mission in life. I would encourage you to document that and really think about that, right? But then there's more to this Venn diagram. The third question the Dreamcatcher program really encourages a student to discuss, and we talked about it a little bit already, is what can you get paid for, right? Here's just the economic reality of the world, and there's nothing wrong with being a poet or a philosopher, but know what the labor market value is for that and what the possible wage ranges are that you might look at, right? But I love the program because this theoretical framework builds terminology to all this. You see, because if you can get paid for something and the world needs it, that might be your vocation. And your vocation is different from a mission, and students need to understand that. That there might be their first entry-level job, but they're not going to do that their whole life. A recent statistic I read is that today's high school seniors will have 14 jobs by the time they're 40. That may not be your and my experience, but for them, that's going to be their reality. They're not going to get one job for 40 years and get a gold watch, right? So that might be their vocation. And if you find a student right here in the middle of all three of these things, if they find something that they love to do, the world needs it, and they get paid for it, that's where they're going to feel excitement, right? But they also might feel complacency and a sense of uncertainty. Now, that may be a little unexpected to think about. Why might they feel uncertain? Why might they feel a little complacent in that space? Well, because there's a fourth dimension to this Venn diagram. And the last question is when we don't ask our students enough. And it's not just what do you like to do, but this question is what are you great at? See, we can be good at a lot of things. We can be mediocre at a lot of things. But there's some great authors out there, far more prolific than I. If you read Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers, and talk about people that spend 10,000 hours doing something and they truly become great at it. I don't want you and our students to be good. I don't want you to phone it in. I don't want you to be complacent. I want our students to be their best selves and to find out what is it that they're great at, right? And if our students can find something they love to do that is both something they're great at and something they get paid for, well, that terminology, that's called their profession. Their profession is different from a vocation, which is different from a mission. Are you with me? And if there's something that they love to do and they're great at, well, that's where they're going to put their effort, and that's where they're going to develop a passion. See, I think words matter a lot, especially with the population we serve. The words we use frame the realities. And so I hate the phrase, follow your passion. If you ever tell students that, I would encourage you to eradicate that from your lexicon from this day forward. It's a horrible advice to tell your students to follow your passion. You know why? Because most of our students don't have a passion yet. Frankly, how do you follow something you don't have, right? Only about 11% of our students have a declared passion. That is really, that actually might be uninformed, but what they think they might be interested in. There's going to be about another 10% that have multiple passions. Their anxiety also goes through the roof when you say follow your passion, because how do you follow so many things simultaneously well when they have divergent interests that they want to do in their life, right? For majority of our students, they're still figuring it out, and they're still in that self-exploration, self-discovery, career exploration process. So follow your passion is horrible advice. Instead, I would submit to you, you tell them to follow their effort. See, the more you do something, the more you love something. And the more you love something and the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the better you get at it, the more you're likely to do it. How many of you like to repeatedly engage in activities you suck at? I'm not good at golf, so I don't do it that often. And if I do, it's with my buddy Ryan, who's really good, and we play best ball. And I just whack, and then I pick up my ball and put it wherever his is, and we drink. Like that's my idea of, that's 9 holes, right? And I just play best ball with him because I'm not good at it, I'm not great at it, so I don't put more effort into it, and it's a cycle. See, passion is actually the result of a lot of effort and falling in love with something and getting good at something. It's not square one. Students don't start with following their passion, they follow their effort. And if your students can find something in the world that they're great at, and they can get paid for it, and the world needs it, and they're in this bottom center quadrant here, that's where they'll feel comfortable, but they'll have a feeling of emptiness. Why? Because they don't love it. I find myself there. One of my first jobs out of school, the world needed me to do it. Countrywide Home Loans needed me to work for them. I got paid to do it. I got paid to work in the foreclosure department. And I was great at it. I filed those files like nobody's business correctly every time, right? And I met every metric. But man, I wasn't happy. True story, falling asleep in the filing room at a mortgage company that no longer exists, thinking, is this why I went to Jesuit school? Like, that, I felt empty, but I can get paid to do it, right? If your student can find something they love to do, and they're great at it, and they can get paid for it, they'll feel satisfied, but they'll also have a sense of uselessness, because they're not solving a problem the world has. They're moving paper from the inbox to the outbox, even if they enjoy it. And we know from all of the data that today's students, the millennials and Generation Z, they need that connection to a mission larger than themselves. And if your students here on the top, if they find something they're great at, they love, and the world needs it, and they're here in the top center, they're going to find delight and fullness. It's the starving artist syndrome, but they'll have no wealth because they can't actually get paid for it. A great author, Jim Collins, he wrote the book Built to Last and Good to Great. He calls this center the hedgehog. It's that thing right in the middle where all of these conditions are met. And while I don't know you, I know you. And I think we want our students to find something right in the middle. Now, the Japanese have a word for it. It's called Ikagai. There's a great TED Talk, by the way, if you just Google TED Talk Ikagai. There's a great TED Talk about like what Ikagai is. And it's a Japanese term that is poorly translated as the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning. It's that thing in your stomach that gets you excited. You bound out, you jump out of bed to do because you're elated with the intrinsic motivation and the joy to do it. Imagine if we had a college and a process and a culture where we help students find their Ikagai. Imagine if we intentionally asked them questions, both in counseling sessions and in the classroom and in line for financial aid. If we asked them, what makes your heart sing? And what do you love to do? And what's the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning? And what's your Ikagai, right? See, we have a system that we've inherited that is degree-focused. It is course-focused. It is Carnegie Unit-focused. It is degrees and certificate-focused. I asked the question to you today as we're curious together. What would it look like if we actually had a purpose-driven education system? What would it look like if our mission at CWI was help students find their purpose and then equip them for it. I think our general education pattern might look a little different. I think our orientation and onboarding process might look a little different. I think the things we send home and the requirements we have for them, frankly, might look a little different. And again, not in a better or worse way, but just differently. I love this theoretical framework because I think this is at the gestalt. This is at the holistic core. This is the DNA of why we got into this field. And so, unsolicited plug, and I don't get commission or anything, but if you're interested in this, check out the Dreamcatcher program, because I think a lot of your students at all ages might benefit from going through these 8 modules and really helping to find something that they're really passionate about. See, because I have found that while education is often organized by courses focused on graduation, be curious with me and ask, what if education was organized around learners focused on fulfilling their purpose? And for me, that's a place I want to work. That's a place I want to enroll in. That's a place I want to recommend to my neighbors and to my nephews and to my everyone I can. I'll scream from the mountaintops, because that's a place I think that has vibrancy and relevancy. See, as we look at a timeline of what's happening in the world right now, the rate of change is dramatically shifting. Have you felt that in the last 2 years? Especially since the pandemic, right? If we look at time, the historic rate of acceleration has probably looked something like this. As I'm clicking and it's not advancing, there it is. Here's what the rate of change looked like. It started off slow and then it's slowly increasing. There's actually a great quote that was made in 2012 by Jonathan McDowell, and he said, for some reason my clicker is not wanting to advance now. There it is. Do I have to point at it now? Did the room just, there it is. The slowest rate of change for the rest of your life is today. Think about that for a minute. The slowest rate of change for the rest of your life is today. That excites about 10% of you and scares the other 90% of us. Because as human beings, we like stability and consistency and predictability, but guess what? Sorry, that's gone for the most part, right? There was this magic line in this continuum of the pandemic that we could draw a line, and we know that the pandemic was really an accelerator for a lot of what we've gone through and have done. And I don't know why this is no longer clicking for me. There it is. So there's the acceleration for the pandemic acceleration. And here's what it looks like now. It's like an accordion was compressed. And there's a lot more change and volatility. So here's the reality. That's just that's the new normal, right? And we've talked about that a little bit. We know it's happening. Many of us have used new tools and new platforms that we've never used before. I know I didn't even use Zoom until 2020, but it's not new. It's been around since 2011. WebEx, nope, not yet. Computer, not yet. Are you going to advance for me? Zach, this advance for me. So WebEx was 1995. I didn't use WebEx until 2021. We're laggards in some of these respects, right? But this is not necessarily new technology. Next slide. I'm just going to wave at you. You'll be my pointer. That'll be less disruptive. Thank you. So you might have seen slides like this on the internet. It's about the rate of adoption. And we can see that the telephone took 50 years to adopt, the television 22 years, the cell phone 12 years, YouTube 4 years, Pokemon Go 19 days. Some of you are like, yeah, I found one in the parking lot, right? Some of you are playing right now. There's one on stage. The rate of change has continued to accelerate in the adoption of that, and we're feeling that. We're going to continue to feel that, which means that our curriculum and other things are no longer going to be the way it was before. And a lot of things on that timeline are not just compressing, but they're shifting. For example, education to a job used to be linear, and it's no longer linear. And what this slide reads, as you can barely see in this light, is that instead of going to college to get a job, students will increasingly be going to a job in order to get a college degree. Now think about this system for a moment. This is called job first, college included. This is a different mindset. Some of the synapses in your brain might be firing for the first. You're trying to wrap. I had to think about this a little while before I really understood this. But the quote that you can't read at all in red says that 74% of parents of high schoolers would love an opportunity where their child would get a job first that paid for college. Because we know there's an opportunity cost for someone that takes 2, 4, 6 years or more to get a 2 or 4 year degree. And if they're not earning during that time and they're getting in debt during that time, they're not actually being productive. And this comes from Brandon Bustede, who is a wonderful writer for Forbes. And there's on the bottom of my slide a number of companies that are already doing this. JP Morgan Chase, Walmart, Starbucks, Disney, Papa John, Amazon. They're already saying to your students, hey, come work for us. We'll give you a salary. We'll give you benefits. We'll give you a 401k contribution, a dental plan, and free college tuition. And some companies are saying it doesn't have to even be in our field. It could be in anything. You want to come work at Amazon, you can go back to school and be a dental assistant. And they'll pay for that. Because they understand that motivation and that being like investing in the human being that's on their workforce, they're gonna be more productive on the clock, they're gonna stay with you a little bit longer, and employers have realized they're gonna have attrition and anyway. Students are going to leave, they might as well get the most out of them, have that affinity and that loyalty while they can, and if it takes them 6 years or 7 years to get a part-time 4-year degree, that's great. That employer knows they're at least working and investing, and that individual is earning the entire time. You see, in the past, we learned in order to work, but in the future, we will work in order to continuously learn. Think about how much we learn and the professional development that we have in our field. That's the same for every other company and every other field moving forward. And from an educational standpoint, in the past, we measured learning by degrees and the Carnegie Unit. We measure learning by seat time, right? Small departure. As a college vice president, I spent years as a dean, and I would be in charge of the schedule. And so we know that 54 hours of lecture and 72 hours of lab is a 3-unit course, and 60 units is a 2-year degree, and 120 units is a 4-year degree. And we get paid by the state, and we are measured by the Carnegie Unit. Do you know where the Carnegie Unit came from? A few years ago, I was curious, and I looked it up because I wanted to know. It actually turns out it was created and invented about 100 years ago in the last century in Chicago by Carnegie for one explicit purpose. It was to calculate a teacher's pension. Because it makes sense. The more hours you spend teaching, the larger your pension should be in retirement, right? So it was simply an equation to track the number of hours a teacher taught. And we've manipulated it, kind of stretched it, to now be the cornerstone of learning. So now in our world, it takes 54 hours to learn French poetry or spot welding. They both take 54 hours. Didn't you know that? Regardless of the student's past knowledge of French or the shop they have in their garage. Like, that doesn't matter. It still takes 54 hours, and that's how we get paid, and that's our course curriculum, and that's the way that our system is ran. So in the future, what we will see is in the future, we will measure learning by certifications, by CBE, competency-based education, and by prior learning assessments, credit for prior learning. Basically, we are going to be shifting in the next 10 years, according to my hazy crystal ball. We will be, as a country, shifting from outputs, seat time, to outcomes, verifiability. Our citizenry and our taxpayers are demanding it. Our legislators are asking for it. And so we have a choice. And this is me providing support and challenge at the same time. We have a choice to embed ourselves in that conversation and really start discussing it, or fighting against it as the onslaught and the tornado comes towards us over the next decade. It's going to come. I just don't know exactly when or the degree of tenacity, but it's going to be coming. Now, a few years ago, I created this animated video called Success in the New Economy, and a few of you I know have seen it, and it's about 8 years of my life put into 10 minutes of animation. You're thinking to yourself, so I could have skipped this and just watched a 10-minute video? Well, yes, in part, that is true, but I got you. You can't leave now. But I encourage you to share this, and it really does take these complicated concepts of the labor market and of educational realities, and it packages it in a way, and it's available in English and in Spanish, and it packages it in a way so people really understand what's happening in the truth of the labor market. And since then, I've done a lot of other animated videos. I produced over 54 with state departments of education, with national organizations like Skills USA, with individual districts and departments, and a lot of them have very specific themes about our world. And it's about access and equity and success, and about having that competitive advantage after graduation. And I want to share one more. You saw a video clip from Success in the New Economy earlier about the 1-to-7 ratio. I want to show one more clip that really talks about where I think CWI has a unique opportunity for where you're positioned to really help your community.
Even when the US economy is humming along, it contains a strange paradox. Employers have a hard time finding workers, yet many workers have a hard time finding appropriate employment. This mismatch can be explained, in part at least, by the change in requirements in the labor market. For example, of 100 workers in 1950, only 2 needed a college degree. Today, it's almost 50. In 1950, only 10 needed prior work experience. Today, it is more than 70. As it turns out, many employers have started to demand a college degree, even if the job does not necessarily require one, in order to screen for general work maturity. They just can't seem to find a better indicator for promising employees. That might be fine if most people had a degree and the applicable experience. However, it may be surprising to hear that in the United States, out of every 100 ninth graders, only 21 graduate from college within 9 years. What sounds like an alarming statistic is actually nothing unusual for a healthy economy. College degree rates are similar all around the world. But as long as employers continue to screen applicants for a college degree, they're missing out on the vast majority of our national talent, critical positions go unfilled, and workers can't find good jobs. In addition, even degree holders may find it difficult to enter the workforce as they lack the experience many employers require. So what if there was an alternative path to filling these well-paying jobs?
There is. Did I set that up well for you? That's a 6-minute video, by the way. It goes on. But it talks about internships and work-based learning and relevant work experience. So this slide that you also can't read in this room says, what if we facilitated every learner, not these learners or those learners, what if every learner, every student at CWI received relevant work-based learning internships or experiences before they graduated? Would they not be more competitive? Would they not have more relevancy and help to clarify their path and their Ikagai? See, I want to give you one example from my institution, because there's a lot of different ways to do work-based learning. And the gold standard is maybe do like an apprenticeship program, internships, but you could also embed it in the programs that we offer. See, a few years ago at my institution, we surveyed our students and asked them, what do you want from us? Like, how can we do a really good job and be the best community college for you we can? And they said they really came to us and they wanted 3 things. In our student survey, the students first wanted speed. They didn't want to wait 2 years for a 2-year degree. They couldn't do 4 years. They didn't want to wait 2 years for a certificate. They were unemployed. They needed to make money. They had to provide for their family. They needed speed to the labor market. The second thing they wanted was affordability. Many had gotten burned at a private vocational school or already had student loan debt and were unemployed, and they couldn't afford to take out expensive student loans. So they were coming to the community college. And the third thing they said they wanted was a guaranteed job at the end of the training program or certificate or degree program. And I thought, okay, we're a community college. We're subsidized by the state. We've got the affordability. We've got that in spades. And I said, speed we could work on. We could do something with that. And I said, well, I can't guarantee them a job, but I could guarantee them a job interview with my industry partners. So what we created was the ACE program, the Accelerated Certificate and Employment Model. And what made the ACE program unique was a number of different variables that are not appearing on the slide. And they didn't want to be on that slide. They decided to import to this computer didn't like that slide. So what this outlines are the 11 things we did in the ACE program that made it different. And here's what we did. We compressed the schedule. We didn't change curriculum. We didn't alter the course outlines of record. But instead of it being a full semester class, we took all of the programs that had a lot of lab and we just compressed it. We had them come to school from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. It was their full-time job. They were 40 hours a week in lab with some lecture. We worked with all of our industry partners. We invited them in the classroom, and they actually co-taught some of the project-based learning pieces that really embedded industry problems into the curriculum. And then something unique we did is we had mock interviews like a lot of us will do, but we actually invited the HR personnel from the company to do the mock interviews with the students 2 weeks before the same person came back for the real interview with the same student. The amount of self-confidence and self-efficacy was off the charts. The students did better because they had a relationship with the employer throughout their entire program, and we did it as a cohort. We put the same 25 students in the same program, and they got 1.5 years of college done in 7 months. No curriculum change. There's a 32-unit, 4-credit certificate in 7 months, full-time. We had attrition off the charts, and the industry engagement was really because I asked them one question. I asked my industry partners, are you pigs or are you chickens? Have you heard this before? I sat with the industry and I said, look, I had breakfast this morning, an unsolicited recommendation. This morning I ate a biscuit and hogs, like totally good. And so this morning I had on my plate for my breakfast, I had eggs. Well, see, the chicken was involved in my breakfast. The chicken contributed and donated to my breakfast. But the pig was committed to my breakfast this morning. And I just asked my industry partners, Are you a chicken or are you a pig? And I said, and either way is fine. If you want to just come one day a year, if you want to just let us have an industry tour, if you want to donate some eggs, okay, we'll take it. But I want pigs. I want people that are willing to come into the classroom, to let my students have class in your employment center. And I had public agencies. I had H&R Block actually host one of my accounting classes, and it was a tax preparation class in the conference room at H&R Block. I mean, you want to talk about real-world relevancy, proximity, and placement matters, and I didn't change any curriculum. It was just a matter of changing schedule and changing the timing and the place of this, and it was successful. Here's one of our alumni who was homeless and unemployed. He went through the ACE program in 7 months, graduated with a certificate, got a job, got promoted, came back and got his 2-year degree over time, and recently just purchased a home. This is a picture of him speaking to the other students at the ACE graduation, telling them what he had accomplished just in the previous 2 years as a result of our accelerated program. But it's for the returning workforce and incumbent workers as well. Here's a gentleman that worked for Boeing. His skills became obsolete, and he came back to us after 27 years. Then he became a technician for UPS. And he got employed within 90 days after commencement. This slide also had all the success metrics that it's invisible. You can't read it. But it says that we served 327 students that all went through, and we had 82% job placement rate. 4 out of 5. 82% job placement rate in a living wage, relevant and aligned with the program of study. It blew every other metric out of the chart. We were written up by the Brookings Institute as having one of the most effective equity-based workforce development community college programs of the country. It led to additional grants and a partnership with the Cwi Foundation. The work-based learning approach worked because it wasn't just for these or those students. It was understanding that because of the changing economy, all students needed what we were providing through this program. So I want to end in my last few minutes with just a couple education trends. I actually want to give you 4 education trends that I think in my crystal ball I'm starting to see throughout the country as I travel and do this work with like-minded progressive colleagues like you. See, in 2020, I was asked to do a research project for the counties of Los Angeles and Orange County. In that region, we have a number of community colleges, and they were having trouble converting to online. We were online for over a year in Southern California because of COVID. And there are some programs like cosmetology and culinary arts that are a little hard to do remotely. And so we engaged in a research project to identify for these hard-to-convert programs, hard to convert online, how can we do it in a very successful way that helps our students? So we interviewed the 28 community colleges in Los Angeles and Orange County to find out what they had already done in spring 2020. We had 57 deans and community college faculty all respond to the survey. We then did 43 interviews across 13 states because California doesn't have all the answers. And so we looked at best practices in other places. And in this report, there's 228 references and citations and hyperlinks if you're interested in this kind of thing. It's a treasure trove for a lot of the answers that we found. And basically, there are 4 main takeaways that are completely jumbled in the formatting of the slide. The first basically describes that most of our colleagues are preparing for the new normal and are embracing hybrid flexible or high flex. And I know and I want to validate and I want to encourage CWI, you've already started taking steps in this direction. But hybrid flexible learning is where we as a system and as a culture and as a higher ed community, that's where we're headed. Because the world is asynchronous. The world is part virtual. Over 30% of the workforce is virtual, and students need flexibility in schedule, but to ensure instructional continuity without any reduction in educational quality. And when done right, a hybrid flexible model where a student can take one course and do on ground this week and online next week and be able to toggle back and forth synchronous or asynchronous, that's where we're heading as a society, and that's what's going to increase our enrollments, increase our persistence, and increase our completion numbers is by simple modality changes that require, frankly, very little funding. No changes to policy, no changes to curriculum. The second bullet point here is that the instructor's role is shifting. And it's shifting, for those of you in the classroom, it's shifting from content delivery to a work-based learning facilitator. Because see, now in today's world, and I know this is sometimes hard for us to humbly accept, but information's everywhere. Now a student can go online on YouTube or linked learning and they can learn anything from anybody. And so reciting a lecture or a mediocre PowerPoint is no longer going to be what captures them and keeps them coming back week after week after week. But engaging with them, expanding the walls of your classroom and the walls of CWI to include employer locations, government public service locations, nonprofit organizations, expanding the classroom experience like some of you have done. I know there's a school here in Idaho that during the pandemic, the culinary arts program moved to the local soup kitchen. and they're providing to the community and ensuring instructional continuity. Things like that are happening all over, and embedding the third-party credentials, adopting national certifications, sharing your course content in Blackboard so you don't reinvent the wheel. This is now what is going to be common and normal, so that we're actually facilitating learning in and out of the classroom, not just delivering content, which frankly they can get anywhere, and we don't have to always replicate it. The third bullet point there is talking about augmented reality and virtual reality. It's gotten a lot better in the last 10 years. Not yet. The third bullet talks about augmented reality and virtual reality. It's exponentially growing. And I predict that 10 years from now, every student at CWI will have Oculus Rift goggles or something like it, and half of you will be teaching in the Metasphere, the Googleverse, some virtual classroom. That's where we're already meeting that way. We're going to be learning that way pretty quickly, and the technology is superb and it's working. And there's a lot of research I don't have time to get into today that shows the learning gains are equal, and the students are learning in that way. And it's not exclusively replacing the classroom experience. Frankly, nothing can, but it supplements and it augments, and it increases access, and it decreases barriers. And it eliminates, frankly, the skills gap and the equity gaps by having some more technical infusion into where we're going. And the last one there talks about the tools and platforms. And I use the analogy of a Swiss Army knife to say that there's not one or two tools that I recommend, but it's more a Swiss Army knife that has like 4 or 5 tools, the suite of tools. You might have Blackboard, and is it collegiate? And maybe some other communication tool. You might have the 3 or 4 that you're going to use more pervasively. And my recommendation to you is, again, if you're like me, I have platform fatigue. The last thing I really want to learn is another software program with another unique sign-in. So as a community, pick the 4 or 5 that are going to be your core and use them with fidelity and really dig in deep with them. Augment that with the 1 or 2 discipline-specific tools, but don't have 10. But you need to pick the 3 to 5 that are really going to be the cornerstone of the CWI experience. So in conclusion, I have learned that industry certifications and work-based learning combined with a general education is what gives all students a competitive advantage. And that's what I think what we all want for our students. And I want to encourage you and thank you and support you as you continue to go on and doing this for your community. Thank you very much for your time today.
Hey, Dr. Fleming, thank you so much. I hope if you're like me, there is so much to think and reflect on in there. And I hope that I would never, and it's always a mistake, to do any kind of attempt to summarize a speaker. I know for me, the 3 quick things, and this is, again, not comprehensive, but I think a lot about this idea of knowing our environment. Do we really feel like we have a perspective on how each of either the areas, the functions we're in, do we feel like we understand what's going on out there? Not maybe in our own experience, we have expertise from our past work, but so much of what I'm hearing Dr. Fleming call out is also forward-looking and side-looking, not only backward-looking, which is important too. What are those changes you identify? I think there's some great stuff, right? And it's great to write down specific ideas. Hopefully, over the next day or 2, you're also adapting maybe suggestions you see to think about how it fits in your area, if there are those. And I think the third, and I'm going to co-opt the chicken pig, but I'd like to be a community that commits, and you can determine what animal I'm referencing, but we commit to leading the change that we see. My fear is that my personal fear for myself, for anybody, is that we decide at some point in our career to opt out on change. Man, I hear that was a great speaker, that's incredible, but I'm tired. Or, that requires me to have to revisit, reinvigorate. And I want to encourage, because we all face those moments. I've faced them. And I promise, it's no different than when we might have been 18, 30, whatever energy level we're at in life. It's always better to keep going than to atrophy. And despite that, my kids still think I'm a dinosaur when it comes to technology. And I keep reminding them I'm the IT manager for my 93-year-old mother. So it goes, we all do have a lifespan, I will say that. But boy, variability of change, I I counted my employers. This is my 11th organization. And I can't, I don't recommend change for change's sake, but wow, lots of different areas. You add to it life learning, right? I happen to have a spouse, I have 4 kids, volunteer, serve in different roles. So much of that we can bring, and I know this community is an incredibly rich community. It's probably a great time also now to transition. I want to take a brief moment, and maybe a little more than a moment, to celebrate some of you. What I love about employees, staff, those who've been here from the beginning, what I love about this is in many ways, it's quite honestly, if you're like me, I think it's a great chance to celebrate an individual or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, but it's also a group celebration of us because we're inspired by our colleagues, I hope. I'm inspired by my colleagues, you all, and I love the opportunity to recognize some individuals, and at the same time, I hope those of us that are not being called up take pride in the fact that we have colleagues who are stepping forward, being acknowledged, and recognize that that is us. Because I'm a big believer at the end of the day, we're all wearing the same jersey, if you want to use it in a sports analogy. And it's got CWI on the front, and I coach youth sports. And I spend so much time with our youth talking about in a team sport environment how important it is for the front of the jersey, not the name on the back. When we lose that desire to say, I have to be the MVP myself, we can do some amazing things. And at the same time, I love it when we have that front of the jersey mindset, we get to celebrate individuals. So in some ways, it comes back around. So with that, I do want to step into, there'll be an employee recognition with staff and faculty, and then a recognition of those who've had tenure here. And to do that, I want to kick off, I would like to call up Mike Jensen, who's our Staff Senate President. And Mike, I'd love to call you up. I like your tie, too.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Jensen. I'm the CWI Foundation Director and Staff President for the 22-23 year. So just wanted to share with you a few quick moments about the Staff Senate. We're made up of 9 different members from different departments in the college, 6 senators and 3 officers. Each member serves a 2-year term. We are the employee's voice in the governance process here at CWI. And most important, one of our main functions is to recognize our staff for the outstanding jobs they do, and we're able to do that on a monthly basis. And so I'd like to have, if you're a staff senator this year, if you would please stand. We'd just like to recognize you for your service. So thank you. Thank you. We also would like to thank those who nominate our staff for of the month. Without you, we wouldn't be able to recognize these wonderful people who bring so much desire, so much creativity to CWI. And so we'd like to thank you for that. If you'd like to ever nominate somebody for staff of the Senate, it's very easy. You just go to, I've got to put my glasses on so I can see. mycwi.edu, go to committees, and then on the Staff Senate page, there's a nomination form. Very easy. We'd love for you to share and share with us some of those things that you see staff do that make CWI what it is on there. We'd like to now, I think there's a slide that shows you all the staff of the month that were awarded last year. So if you are one of the staff of the month, could you please stand? Thank you for that. At this time now, it is my pleasure to share with you who is going to be our Staff of the Year. I'll turn it over to the video.
Staff recognition is so terribly important. Our staff just works so wonderfully hard. They're really identifying with our purpose here at CWI and our purpose statement.
I think we have a culture of caring when it comes to specifically our student services working with students. I think you have to have a caring background and be able to live that, Patrick, the one student at a time, and that really speaks to our caring value of caring for others, caring for our students.
Excellence is always a word that comes to mind. There's just not a person here that isn't striving for their best and to raise themselves and those they work with and their students to that level. But what I see that's exceptional often is the amount of caring, the personal connections, how they go the extra mile to ensure that those around them know that they care.
I have a lot of guesses because we have a lot of strong individuals, but actually who it is, no, I have no idea.
All right. Aw, I wondered if it was her. That's wonderful.
Please tell me.
And then and I can just look. And then what am I supposed to do? Just be excited?
She definitely is deserving of this, and I can't think of a better person. So very, very proud to have worked alongside this person.
Congratulations, Josie. Well deserved.
Congratulations, Josie. I'm so excited. I'm just so excited.
Josie, congratulations. I can't think of anybody more deserving of the Staff of the Year, Employee of the Year than you.
Josie, if you'd like to come forward, we have a...
Josie, come here. Congrats. Here, why don't we come in front?
Thank you. Well, this was a surprise to me. I've been at CWI since 2009, so I've been here a long time and know several of you. But I think like most of us, our passion is to help students and be excited to see their journey and goals. And so thank you, everyone. And Kathy Carson, she and I help students through Math 157 and 257. And last year, doing it all remote was a lot. So thank you, Kathy, and everybody else.
Congratulations again, Josie. I'd now like to turn it over to Andrea Shoemaker, the Faculty Staff Senate.
Am I hot? Am I hot? Am I hot? I'm hot. All right. I am the Faculty Senate President this year, incoming. The very first thing that I want to do is find Maya Kelly. Where is Maya? Maya, stand up. She's making a face. Let's give Maya a round of applause. Maya deserves much kudos for stepping in midstream last year as the Faculty Senate President. And I so appreciate that she did, and she did a fantastic job. So thank you, Maya. With that, any faculty member, please stand. If you are a faculty member, stand up. I'm giving you a stretch break because I needed one. So when I think about faculty recognition, I think about celebrating all of the wonderful faculty. I always think to myself, like, this is a tricky time because we're recognizing a handful of people, but every single one of you that is standing up, I need you to hear that we so appreciate you. I appreciate you. Everyone appreciates you, correct? Am I right, those of you that are still sitting down? So thank you for being wonderful. I would like the 9 that are on the next slide that were acknowledged as Faculty of the Month to stay standing. for an additional recognition. Please stand, because you are extra, extra wonderful. So these are the folks that represent our outstanding faculty of the month. And we're recognized throughout September through May is really our recognition time, because that's when our faculty are hard at work and being nominated and awarded Faculty of the Month. So, without further ado, Ross has the magic touch to play the video.
Recognition is important for several reasons. One, for the person and themselves. It validates what they do. It lets them know that others are, paying attention and seeing it, even though sometimes we're all so busy that we don't have that opportunity to tell the person.
Celebrating our Faculty of the Year, this gives all of us as faculty an opportunity to have a role model and to celebrate the good things that are going on in all of our classrooms. Faculty really are our frontline providers of education to our students. So by celebrating the achievements of our faculty in the classroom, this gives us an opportunity to showcase and highlight those values to our entire community.
Oh, yay!
Guessed it.
Such a well-deserved honor. I'm so fortunate to work with the philosophy faculty.
There is not a more deserving member of the faculty at CWI than Mike Robinson. One of the absolute best faculty we have. It is someone who students rely on, students count on, faculty know they can turn to and count on.
Students love him.
Students leave CWI thinking about the classes they had with Mike Robinson. And I think that makes him a unique teacher, that makes him a special teacher, and certainly most deserving of this award.
Michael is absolutely fantastic. He is adored by both students and faculty.
Congratulations, Mike. You deserve this award more than anybody. It's just a delight working with you and getting to call you a friend.
Congratulations, Mike Robinson. I am so thrilled that I have the chance to work with you at the College of Western Idaho. You are an amazing instructor.
Just say thank you. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it.
And now I get to invite Ryan up to talk about service awards, correct? Service awards.
Hi, Ryan Herring, Vice President of HR, longtime listener, first-time caller. I'm really excited to be up here today to talk about those that are receiving their service awards this year. We have 72 people. 72 of your peers in this room receiving either their 5-year service award or their 10-year service award. The employees in this room, you are CWI's most valuable assets, so thank you. Thank you. Truthfully, thank you for everything you do for our students, for our community, for your peers. You are crucial to everything we do. So with that, I'm gonna have a slide because 72 people. If I could get those that are receiving their 5-year service award to please stand up and stay standing. Forty-two individuals receiving their 5-year award. Next up for our 10-year awards. If they would please, there we go. Please stand, those receiving your 10-year award. Whether it's your second day, Tristan Lewis, or your 10-year anniversary or your 13-year anniversary, congratulations to all of you for reaching the milestone of the fall address. So please take a moment congratulate each other, congratulate everyone. You are CWI.
Thank you. We don't get a chance to do a break, so I know everybody's just done some standing. Can we just stand one more time for about 20 seconds? Don't go anywhere unless, of course, you have to go somewhere. And then we're going to kick off the last part of our fall address with the fall address. So I think the remaining part of our time together is going to be an opportunity to move from divergent thought provocative with our speaker, a chance to thank many of our stakeholders from board to foundation, staff, faculty, those of you who have 5, 10-year service awards, and maybe start to shift the thinking, at least through both marriage of this institution, taking parts of maybe kind of what makes us special and where we're going, and also acknowledge that we're stepping into a literal fall term, that Monday we'll have new faces in our classrooms and perhaps returning faces. But before we do that, I believe, Ross, do we have a video that we will kick this off with? And then it's my privilege to share some remarks. One of the things you all know is our new brand look, right? This wonderful logo. It's frankly on theme from all of what we've talked about today, right? While we had a wonderful logo and brand, times keep a-changing, right? And the need to think about how we communicate ourselves and even how we present our logo. And I hope you're like me. I love this look. I love the contemporary nature of it, the emphasis of who we are, even down to the color schemes that make up an Idaho that's full of the greens and the outdoors nature of this place. I would just right off the bat say, I hope you're prepared for hearing more about CWI in our community. I believe I've shared remarks across this valley, and I can't tell you how many times I will ask people, and people will immediately be enthusiastically welcoming, love CWI, and I'll say, how many of you in this room can tell me even where our campus is? I'm going to say 2/3 of the room has real trouble, if not outright doesn't know. Can't name Garrity Boulevard, can't sort of connect there, and yet these are folks who have generally positive goodwill. Even larger percentages can't tell us about our value. They can't even tell me about the nature of some of the programs we offer. Maybe at best guess, it's a 2-year school. They know that. That is a travesty from my perspective, because I know, this room knows, that this is an institution that has so much to offer, is already serving a tremendous number of individuals. And yet, with that lack of precise awareness, I think it tells me we have incredible opportunity. And that's just a comment. I think you're going to see us more and more and more in the community. And some of it I know. It's just not, we have to sort of announce it in another week or two. Some of it's just going to be more general marketing. But I promise we're a place for smart people. And I want to make sure as many people know. Smart people defined as understanding the value, understanding what we offer and what we deliver. And I want to make sure that we do our best to spread the word in a broad and focused way. You all have on your sheets, many of you have heard, I've had a chance to visit with many, not all in-service meetings, but this idea of my why for CWI. It's this invitation to reflect, and that's a good theme again with Dr. Fleming talking. But what is our connection? And while I don't have as fancy a diagram, of where mission meets passion meets what you're good at, which by the way I thought was excellent. My summary of that is we start with asking ourselves as a community to reflect on what is it that connects us to this institution. I hope you have a personal connection to CWI. I don't have research to quote, but I can tell you from experience, people who feel a unique connection to their employer are going to have a better reason to get out of bed in the morning. And another, that fuel in the tank, so to speak. I know my why for CWI, there's a multitude of ways I can share it, but it comes down to this. I am passionate about how public higher education has a commitment to the communities they serve to deliver affordable, high-quality education that leads to empowerment. And when I look, I won't get into a long talk for another day, but it's not clear to me that all of public higher ed is serving the way as focused and as, well, I was not going to say reckless, I'm going to say with as much commitment as I believe CWI from its origin story has had. I'm so proud to be able to share in this community the affordability in terms of the tuition that we invite and ask our students to pay relative to every other higher ed institution in this state and out of this state. We cost less today than we did when CWI was founded in real dollars. You can view that in a lot of ways. I want to invite a perspective that actually is intrigued and excited by that concept. I also believe in the commitment and the focus that you all bring to this idea of empowering our students, the idea that our students are the why in terms of who we serve. I've been in organizations where sometimes that's not the case. Students may be valued, but sometimes we flip a little switch. It's subtle but meaningful, where all of a sudden we notice, I'm actually doing this more out of my own convenience, my own motivation. And I'm not here to, I believe and I know that everybody's motivation is to support students. We are a benevolent in our intention. Sometimes unintentionally, we may get in the way of that. And yet I know at a CWI, that marriage of affordability and empowerment is something that I think we've got more right than anything else. And I want to see if we can amplify and grow that. Too long for now, but I invite you to think about writing down my why for CWI. You've seen slides up here of our colleagues. Many of us, the beautiful thing is it allows for individual expression. No one person has the exact same statement. But I think if you see the themes, it comes back to student-centered, empowerment, a better future, hopes and dreams realized or in the process of pursuing. And I love that we're a community that does that. And I'm going to encourage you to think about where you, either at the dinner table with colleagues in the break room, either virtual or in person, think about where that story for each and every one of us comes through. I have a word cloud next, and I put this up because I've shared this in various forums, but I think about the specialness that makes CWI special, and there's a lot of ways, backdrops. I sometimes will present this in the context of higher ed institutions overall, but maybe for us as a community of colleagues, I would just say I think there's three things that we want to keep in mind that keep us special. One is growth. I mean that in a historic, and I also mean that in a forward-looking way. Very few institutions in this country can say that in 13 years they were serving 29,000 students across the dual credit, the academic transfer, the CTE, the workforce development. That is absolutely being shot out of a cannon. I don't have to tell anybody in this room that growth was tremendous. It brought a lot of velocity, I'm sure a lot of energy, but it was also very unique. Forward-looking, though, I see a community that since we were founded and opened up in 2009, we've added 200,000 people to this valley and residents. And I see no reason, and informed individuals who make a living out of thinking about the future growth of the valley, it is not inconceivable we're double in size in the next 25 years. And when you think about that and you realize we are the only community college serving this metro area, half the state's population roughly, I think that's both an opportunity. I think it's also in many ways, a shared responsibility to be thinking about how we are going to be serving with quality at scale that even exceeds where we are today. And I know the stress that the growth has caused. Growth can be extremely stressful as much as we're excited by it. And I guess that leads to the other two things that I think I would highlight here is the promise to students and the promise to our community. I've highlighted it in multiple ways. I won't reiterate too much, but I shared in January 10th, my first day on the job, in front of our legislature, a photo of students. It's a photo we see in our brochures. It's not up here, I don't have it. But for me, I'm a very visual person. I love having that photo in my office. It's I can't remember 4 or 5 different students, but I daydream. I don't know those students' areas of interest, their hopes and dreams. But on different days, I see a junior in college. I see someone studying to become a firefighter. I see someone who's looking to pursue an interest they may have in our horticulture. I think about the breadth and depth of a history student. I think about all the different areas in which we are adding to our students. I don't have goosebumps right now, but I have had goosebumps before when I see that. And as an aside, I've taught high school algebra, geometry. I've taught marketing, business, small business, creative problem solving, design thinking, leadership. I love those student faces in the classrooms that I have had the privilege to be leading. That's a promise we have, and I hope that we continue to think about how we deliver that. And again, this word cloud covers some of that. Students of all different backgrounds, student ages, we are sitting right at the center of where the future is when it comes to our focus, right? All this, we just heard this from Dr. Fleming. I also think about the promise to community. We do have so many stakeholders that make up CWI, but when I meet with mayors, when I meet with employers, when I meet with just everyday parents who stop me, they may know I'm the president of CWI, just friends, and what I love about Idaho is people tend to ask you what you do last. They just want to meet you and know who you are. And sometimes they'll just say, hey, what would you do? What do we need? And I think of a community that does rely on us, that 1-to-7 ratio from Dr. Fleming, and I heard it for the first time here myself. But so much of that number is going to come from a CWI. I had lunch probably 3 months ago out in Caldwell-Nampa line at a TGI Fridays. I didn't even know we had those here. I moved in 2015, but there's apparently one either left or one that's coming to be more. But the server was really thrilled to see that I was affiliated with CWI and talked glowingly about 1, 2, 3, 4 of you, 5 of you. And it wasn't named, it wasn't specific, but shared with me how excited they were. At the same time, they told me they started at a different institution here in the Valley. And they also were talking about their future. In their case, it was going to be nursing. But they also talked about how prior attendance at another institution left them with $100,000 in debt. You know, and we've heard that story before. It's not new. But I turned to a state representative I was eating lunch with, and I said, what saddens me most is that's 10 or more years before that student will be in a position to buy a home, to perhaps make progress on other dreams and aspirations they have. And they're doing it right. They're going to be an incredible servant in the healthcare community. And while I don't have an answer for that student, I do come back to this promise to our community, ways in which we can be innovative in meeting needs. And ironically, one of these areas is a direct hit, and I did not know what Dr. Fleming was going to talk about, but this idea of how students are no longer working to pay for college. They go to work, they keep the paycheck, and that helps defray the cost of them pursuing their hopes and dreams. That model's coming. I'm seeing it and I hear it, and we'll be exploring as a community what that means for us. But more broadly, it's that promise to our community. As I turn inward to us and I move forward in slides, I would just say I want to invite, I'm a huge believer in mindset and culture, and I shared a few of those remarks up front, but I hope we're a community that stays curious. I commit to being that. I've said it before. I've learned at home that I'm not a perfect parent. I'm not a perfect spouse. I hear that often, but that's a different story. But I also know I'm relentlessly resilient in my desire to be better, and I don't let that get under my skin, hurt me, because I know my motive is to be better and to want to ultimately help the organizations I'm a part of. I hope you know that that's my commitment to this institution. This has never been about a position in my career and my career choices. I have a deep passion for students. I have a deep passion for working with colleagues who want to transform lives. And that's really my core why underneath is I love being in the people transformation. I love joining people as they look to transform their lives. That far out exceeds any paycheck. And I know many of you feel that same way, if not all of you. I hope, though, that we also preserve that willingness to opt in and continue to reinvent ourselves, challenge ourselves to think about how we go. But I do think we're entering an era as an institution. I'm going to be transparent with you. I think a lot of the growth of the first 10 years involved a lot of hard work from you all. But some of it, the way I hear stories, it predates my arrival, was students just showing up, driving into campus. They couldn't imagine. Well, I believe we're going to be entering an era where we're going to have to, ironically, fight's too strong of a word, but compete. Really try to tell people why we're distinctive, why we should be their choice. Not trying to fleece anybody at all. More because I'm worried about them being fleeced at other options, alternatives, choices. And I don't mean that from a motive standpoint. I'm not talking about any one instance. That could be a non-educational place. It could be anywhere. What I care about is people know what we represent. And I think we ought to be thinking about how we each get as good as we can get, because I think the future is going to call for that from us. And I'm going to keep it at a conceptual level, because I think it's really a call to each and every one of us, this idea of a call to action. We do have work to do. I think about innovation. I think about, and I don't have answers. I have answers to things I think about, constituents I'm working with, but I also respect your expertise. And I would invite you to think about where can we reflect upon what empowerment looks like, where might we have alliances, where might we create competitive advantage. And competitive advantage is kind of it's kind of a corporate term, but what it really means is how do we do what we do in a way that makes it distinctive, that maybe others can't replicate, not because we're trying to keep people down, but because how we do what we do, our culture, our posture, allows us to kind of approach and meet the individuals we serve uniquely and arguably better than others are able to. And that's a call that I share with you. I want to move now into this roadmap, and I want to share with you a little more details. So some of the information on the slides will be a little more voluminous. I hope you're able to hang with it. I realize we're starting to run up towards the end, and it's never good to put lots of details at the end, but I owe it to you as my colleagues to share and give you insight into where we are in a couple of things, and most importantly, our strategic plan. Why do we do strategic plans? We do them because ultimately, working in concert together to serve 29,000 people, or for that matter, a future where we have 60,000 students. It may be obvious, it may not be, but it takes coordinated action. It takes a lot of people acting in a somewhat or highly coordinated or coordinated fashion to allow for each student to feel both connected, to actually feel like they're able to make that progress, and to have us focus in a way that meets the most number of students. So a strategic plan is an attempt to start to identify not just the mission and the goals, but the ways in which we're going to get there, strategies. You will own in your own classrooms, your own cars, your own places, some of the exact activities you do to achieve that. But you ought to know, I know I'm someone who likes to know where I'm headed. So I want to share with you where I think collectively, as we've solicited input, and we'll continue to roll out to each of you this fall for continued dialogue, this strategic roadmap. I will say we have a process that governs a strategic plan. We have our board of trustees have recently approved the vision and the updated mission. And the vision, I would just say, is what a mission fulfillment looks like. President's Cabinet has established strategic plan, goals, and objectives. Our strategic goals, well, up here is our mission statement and our vision. I think we read it at the beginning of this gathering, or maybe I'm thinking about 3 meetings ago. I don't know. My head spins sometimes. The good news is we often lead it. I've been in organizations where actually every meeting starts with, maybe it was Kay, it was your, I think it was in service, sorry. It was at an in-service last night. See, my mind blends together. But I think our mission statement is succinct, it's focused, and in and of itself, it helps us jump off in the right direction. I would share with you these strategic plan goals and objectives, and there's 4. And again, these are goals. I think these are calling out 4 areas that are gonna, if we focus against these and deliver, we're gonna be well on our way to really being known as a high-performing organization, which is another code for saying really doing it well for students. Number 1 is student success. Now that, I'm not gonna read the words on the right-hand side, but objectives, we will measure what we do. It's a great way to know where you're getting. But I would just say this, I think we care deeply, not just about the students who enter our door, and I know this is true of all of us, but it's about students reaching graduation. And right now, we're at the national average for graduation, roughly 25% of our students when we think about the 150% time to completion. I'm daydreaming about a future where we're above that and maybe well above that. I hope you feel the same way. That's a sentiment I have, that's a hope, but it's also a belief that that's not going to be something I personally lose sight of. Maybe I was the youngest of 4 boys, and so I hate the idea of kind of being average. I kind of spent 18 years being told how average I was by 3 other people who wanted to kind of push me down. And so at the risk of making this a group therapy session, I'll just say I like the idea of us being unique. And ultimately, I've channeled that into a positive, which is our students. The second area is this idea of affordable and accessible education. I love the fact that we take anybody who has the most minimal, and really the reason we have any requirements is the idea that you're sufficiently prepared to be able to make progress here. I've worked at institutions in my past that celebrate more, quite honestly, the percent of students they reject than accept. And that's not us, and it never will be us. And I love this idea of also affordability, right? I'm curious. I ask bold questions. Not all of them may be realized, but I keep wondering in my mind, given all the tools, the opportunities we have, is there a future where we might be able to actually bend the cost of going to community college down, not actually assume things just go up? What does that look like? Those are questions I ask. I'm not necessarily asking you all to ponder on solutions, but it just gives you a little window into some of my thinking. How might I assemble stakeholders? How might we all utilize things that start to actually further address affordability and accessibility? That may or may not be completely what we can hold to, but it's a question I certainly hold on to. Thirdly is advance the local and global workforce. That's back to delivering for our community. It's also implied in that is the idea of empowered outcomes. I can't tell you that my view is that until someone is economically positioned in life, it's very difficult to have voice in society. It's very difficult to advocate when you're focused more on your paycheck, paying your rent, and to step out and add your contributions when you don't have the capacity to come out from the everyday needs. And I think each and every person in this room understands that concept. And I believe that the ability for individuals to step into our workforce, to step into our community, is the beginning of empowerment. And the reason I paused is because what I was just thinking of, I was over in APIN 6 months ago. And there was a very small but reasonably attended career fair. And it was actually in person. It was a little old school for some of the career fairs I've seen, but it was great. Banners were down. And I walked around and I said to several employers, one of whom I'd never heard of, Williams Energy. I said, who's Williams? I said, who are you? I've never heard you. Not that I know everybody. I said, who are you? Oh, we're the main gas pipeline that goes from New Orleans up to Canada. Intermountain Gas taps into that. And they're who you probably know, but we maintain those lines. I said, what are you here for? Oh, we're looking for territory overseers, and they don't need necessarily technical skills. We just need people who, and this is my assumption, I don't remember the specific job, but I think what it had to do with sort of a territory. You might drive around, make sure maintenance checks occurred and that you're keeping logs and records. I said, I don't mean to be crass, but who are you looking for? And we'll take anybody. I don't care about the major. And that wasn't desperation. It was actually acknowledgement that we think there's great people here. But I said, I don't mean to crass. How much do you pay? And I'm not looking for anybody to leave CWI here for a minute. But the person said, $75,000 to $110,000 out of the gate for 2 years. Yeah, hey, sit down, everybody. We're not done. I'll tell you how to apply at Williams Energy later. But I was on the phone. Christy Gilchrist and I were on the phone with Albertsons the other day. Demand planning, logistics. Who do you got? We pay $65 to $75. You can stay at your home. You don't even need to show up 1 day a week at headquarters. Second largest grocer in the country. Our healthcare system, we all know what nurses, very difficult job. But these do come when you marry a CWI experience with those roles. I see empowerment, and I see us meeting this third point. And I won't go on, but this is a community that's special because I think there are many ways people can step into empowerment that marries with their interests or capabilities. And then lastly is an inclusive culture. When I interviewed, I've talked about that this is an institution I want to aspire that we have undifferentiated outcomes for all. I think it's a rich term, it's succinct. I like to try to be succinct. But I think it's a place where I want to see whether you're a refugee who English is not your first language, landed here, whether you're an individual who's first in their family, whether you've come out of a really good home or school situation or not so good. I want to see how we strive to be able to share with pride that this is a place where economic and social mobility occurs for all. And I don't mean to be too idealistic, but I will be for a minute. I think this is actually a future where the work we do will not just lead to individual dreams and hopes, but it's going to lead to better citizens. It's going to lead to the stability and the productivity. It's going to allow us to flourish with people who have nobody thinks the same way. We all have different ways in which we express ourselves. But I think we have the unique ability to be delivering in a way that doesn't have $100,000 debt or somehow less than quality education. And that's what, to me, on the student side and on our own employee side, the idea of high-performing organization that is a culture of engagement, respect, accountability. EOT, which is our executive operations team, you're going to see me monthly. I like open forums. I share my email. I would be happy to engage. I tend to love more face-to-face and verbal, but I will attempt to answer email. gojones@cwi.edu. Weekly emails. I may graduate those to monthly unless somehow people really don't, I sometimes wax poetic. Other times I have a more focused message. But I want to be engaged. I hope you're modeling the same thing in your departments, in your small groups, learning groups, and to colleagues. And then also accountability. I have a board member here. I write reviews. I am accountable, and I want to be accountable. I hope you feel the same way. It links actually to my why for CWI. When we marry accountability, a desire to be our best, married with why I'm here, married with a comfort of being accountable. I'm happy to share what I've been up to, why I'm doing this, and what I believe the impact is. Not because, I guess because I'm always interested in getting better. And I may not achieve goals. My board members may say, you didn't do everything you said you would do. I hope I have a culture where that was actually less important than knowing, did I have the strategic focus? Did I have a good thesis on what I was trying to do? We read that result, and then we course correct. And for those of you that are in the sciences, what you're seeing, right, is a form of the scientific method, right? A thesis, I run the experiment, I read the result, and then I redo, right? Or incorporate that feedback and then redo. I'm going to stop there because I don't teach science. But I hope that was the scientific method. Lastly, I want to share with you briefly a timeline, and then we're going to wrap up because I want you to appreciate where we are. With this strategic plan, and I didn't reference this, but I want to be clear, this is a 3-year strategic plan. It's multi-year. Some people may think it's difficult to, how do you guess where you're going to be in 3 years? And yet I would argue that it's far better to undergo an exercise where we attempt to forecast where we're going to be than to say, well, I can't even imagine, so let's just do the work alone of today. I think it's important that we make an effort to reflect on that. So we're currently in this phase 2. This is an interlude year, and so we're sharing this plan, and it will kick in FY24 with the beginning of that strategic plan. This is both a document that we use, it's a document we share with our accreditation agencies, NWCCU, and ones that we share with our stakeholders, our State Board of Education and others. I hope I didn't drag the energy level down, but sometimes you gotta kind of cover the substance of this. I know that 100 yards away there's kids riding waves in the back and parents, and I know that there's kids and parents playing bowling and other things. So it's always an interesting venue to be focused on things that are a little more specific to suits and talking about where we are. But what does it all roll up to? I think it rolls up for me. I come back to a fall semester that starts Monday. It's the next step in the journey. My kids ask me, how can I be this or that and long-term looking? And I say, just start with today. Start with tomorrow. And at the risk of not being a perfect parent, I hope that's good advice. But I would just share with you, I wish you the best for this fall. I hope you work hard to preserve some capacity to think longer term, to be able to incorporate what a Dr. Fleming, I think it's always interesting to have speakers, but I'm a substance person. I don't want this to be entertainment when Dr. Fleming comes here. I would like to be engaging, but I don't want to be an entertainer. I want to be a colleague to you. I want to be an advocate for this institution, relentlessly focused on helping us walk a journey together towards excellence, continued adaptation, serving this community, relentlessly trying to promote those individuals who are here. I hope you know you have that in my intention, and hopefully you feel that as a leader, hearing me say that that's my commitment to you. But I know it's going to be a shared journey. It's going to be one that will get nowhere in the absence of collective buy-in, and I invite that from each of you. I hope it's a message that you find reassuring, because we're not always together. I hope that Monday you step forward with the energy and enthusiasm I know you have. If there's any way that we can be of service, either of counsel, advice, if there's some sort of blockage, may we attempt to step into that. Certainly happy to be invited. We'll do our best. I'm not a perfect president, but I do commit to trying to get better each day. I thank you. I hope you have a great fall. I look forward to seeing you around the halls, the buildings, perhaps in the grocery store or via email. But thank you for what you're doing. I can't thank you enough. And it's going to be a great journey. I'm 8 months in on hopefully a long time. So thank you very much.